My name is Helen Stabler. I'm 29 years old, and if you had asked me 6 months ago where my life was heading, I would have given you a confident, steady answer. I had a stable job, a comfortable apartment, and a 2-year relationship with a man I genuinely believed I would build a future with, Jimmy Ross, 27. We weren't perfect, but we were solid, predictable even, and I thought predictability meant safety. That illusion held until Lydia Wells slipped back into Jimmy's life. I'd heard of her in passing, a childhood friend, someone who once lived 3 houses down from him, the kind of girl whose stories came wrapped in nostalgia, summer bike rides, school pranks, and remember when adventures Jimmy swore were just harmless memories. She'd moved away years ago, and according to him, they rarely talked beyond the occasional birthday message. But when she moved back to town 6 months earlier, she didn't just return. She re-entered his world with the confidence of someone who believed she still belonged there. At first, I didn't mind. Lydia seemed polite enough. Too polished, too amused by everything Jimmy said, too comfortable sliding her hand onto his arm while she laughed, but polite, and Jimmy insisted I was imagining things. "She's basically my sister," he'd said once. I should have listened to the instinct that twisted inside me. Family doesn't drape themselves across someone else's boyfriend with that kind of effortless intimacy. Still, I convinced myself to be reasonable, mature, understanding. I wanted Jimmy to know I trusted him even when tiny alarms were quietly buzzing in the back of my mind. But everything finally cracked on the morning of our 2-year anniversary. I'd spent 3 weeks planning the evening. I chose a warm, atmospheric steakhouse with old wood interiors and golden lighting that made everything look softer, more meaningful. Not extravagant, but special enough for the occasion. I had even arranged for them to place a small anniversary candle at our table. It wasn't much, but it felt like the kind of gesture couples remember years later. That morning, while I was sipping my coffee and checking emails, Jimmy walked into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes like nothing in the world could possibly be urgent. He leaned over me, kissed my cheek, and said casually, "Hey, so small thing. Lydia just got back from her work trip. She hasn't seen me in weeks. I told her she could join us tonight. You don't mind, right?" I stared at him. "Join us," I repeated. "For our anniversary dinner." He shrugged. "She won't stay the whole time. She just wants to catch up. And I didn't want her to feel left out. You understand, don't you?" The way he said it, warm, sweet, coaxing, made it sound as if disagreeing would make me unreasonable. As if the problem wasn't that he invited another woman to our anniversary dinner, but that I might be too sensitive to handle it. I felt my stomach tighten. "I thought tonight was supposed to be for us," I said quietly. "Come on, Helen," he sighed. "Don't make it weird. Lydia's important to me. You should be happy. I want you two to bond more." There it was, the guilt, the subtle pressure, the implication that I needed to be more accommodating, more flexible, more something. I swallowed my discomfort and nodded, telling myself I was reading too much into it. Red flag number 1. Massive, actually. But I let it slide because I wanted our evening to go well, because I didn't want to ruin it before it even began. At 7 p.m., we arrived at the restaurant. I had imagined walking in with Jimmy's hand in mine, feeling that warm thrill of celebrating something we'd built together. Instead, the hostess led us toward our table, and my breath caught. Lydia was already there, not waiting politely, not sitting with a simple glass of water. No. She had a cocktail in front of her, half finished, and she was reclining comfortably in my reserved booth like she owned it. Jimmy lit up the moment he saw her. "Hales, look who's here already," he exclaimed, sliding into the seat next to Lydia instead of across from me. That should have been red flag number 2. From the moment I sat down, I felt like an unwanted extra on my own date. Lydia and Jimmy launched into 20 minutes of rapid-fire inside jokes, the kind with punchlines that made no sense to anyone but them. Jimmy laughed harder than I'd heard him laugh in weeks. He leaned close to her when she whispered something mischievous, brushing shoulders with her in a way that felt deliberate. I tried to steer the conversation toward us. "Jimmy, remember our first—" Lydia cut me off mid-sentence, leaning forward eagerly. "Oh my God, Jimmy, tell her about the sophomore year party. The one with the inflatable pool and the garden hose." Jimmy's eyes lit up. "Oh man, yes." Off they went again. I sat there smiling, politely, nodding, telling myself to breathe. But inside, I felt something cold sinking into my chest. I couldn't shake the eerie, humiliating certainty that I had become invisible. That Jimmy wasn't celebrating 2 years with me. He was celebrating some old, unfinished bond with her. Then came the wine. The waiter approached to take our orders. I ordered a modest steak. Jimmy chose salmon. Lydia hummed thoughtfully and studied the wine list like royalty. "What's your most premium red?" she asked. The waiter pointed to a bottle, our 2012 vintage. "It's $340. I nearly choked on my water." Lydia grinned. "Perfect. We'll take it." We meant me, my reservation, my tab, my credit card. The waiter looked at Jimmy for confirmation. He smiled and nodded. "Yeah, sounds great. We're celebrating." Celebrating what? Her return. Their memories. Whatever this dynamic was, they poured 3 glasses. Lydia lifted hers and said, "To old friends and new memories." Not a word about anniversaries, not a word about relationships, just old friends. The toast felt like a slap, and I realized something. If I didn't preserve my own dignity in that moment, Jimmy certainly wouldn't. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall, breathing through the humiliation crawling under my skin. I pulled out my phone and calculated my portion with shaking hands. Without hesitation, I walked to the bar, quietly asked a different server to split the bill. For only my part, tipped her generously, and slipped out the back door. The night air hit my face like cold water. Relief, shame, anger, all tangled together. When I finally turned my phone on an hour later, I had 82 missed calls and over 150 texts from Jimmy and Lydia both. "Jimmy, you embarrassed me. You embarrassed her, Lydia, grow up. Real mature, leaving us with the bill." Jimmy again. "Answer your phone. We need to talk. Now." I texted Jimmy only once. "You invited another woman to our anniversary dinner, ignored me all night, and let her order a $340 bottle of wine on my tab. I paid for my part. Figure out the rest." Then I blocked Lydia. Little did I know that dinner was only the beginning of the real betrayal. When I woke up the next morning, I expected anger. Maybe a few more self-righteous texts. Maybe Lydia stirring the pot on his behalf. What I didn't expect was pounding on my apartment door at 8:17 a.m., loud enough to make my picture frames rattle. I wrapped a sweater around myself and cracked the door open. Jimmy barged in without waiting. He looked furious, hair, disheveled eyes, red chest, rising and falling with the dramatic outrage of someone who genuinely believed they were the victim of a crime. "What the hell was that last night?" he demanded. I closed the door behind him, taking a deep breath. It was me leaving a situation I shouldn't have been put in. He threw his hands up. "You abandoned me. Helen, you humiliated me and Lydia in front of an entire restaurant. Do you know how ridiculous we looked?" "Probably about as ridiculous," I said evenly, as I looked sitting alone on our anniversary while you and another woman took over the entire evening. "That's not fair." His voice cracked with self-pity. "Lydia needed me. She just got back. She's been stressed. She's going through a lot. So I'm supposed to share our anniversary dinner with her because she's having a rough week." "You're so jealous," he snapped. "It's controlling. It's exhausting. You can't handle me having close female friends." I stared at him, stunned at the twist. "You're turning this on me." "There shouldn't even be a problem," he insisted. "If you were more secure, more trusting." "Enough." I straightened my shoulders. My voice was calm, even grounded in something I should have found months ago. "Jimmy, this isn't about trust. This is about respect, about how you treated me. And I'm done having the same conversation with someone who refuses to see my side of anything." His expression twisted. "What does that mean?" "It means I said we're done." He blinked several times. "You're breaking up with me over last night?" "No. Last night just made everything impossible to ignore anymore." "You're not serious." "I am." He laughed a sharp, disbelieving, bitter laugh. "Helen, don't be dramatic. You're upset, that's fine. But we're not breaking up just because you can't handle Lydia." "Actually," I said, opening my front door and gesturing toward the hall, "we are." Jimmy didn't move. No, you don't get to do this after embarrassing me." "Take your things," I said, "and leave." He scoffed, shook his head, muttered something about me being crazy and overreacting. But eventually he stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off my wall. I locked it behind him and braced my palms against the wood. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. The next morning at 10 a.m., sharp Jimmy returned, this time with reinforcements. I watched through the peephole as he stood there, flanked by Lydia and his older sister Kara. Lydia had sunglasses on like she was protecting herself from paparazzi. Kara held a tote bag and looked annoyed to even be there. I opened the door. "You could have texted." "You blocked us," Lydia said sharply. "I blocked you," I corrected, "not Jimmy." Jimmy crossed his arms. "We're here for my stuff." "Fine. Good. Clean break." I had spent the previous evening boxing up everything I knew belonged to him. Clothes, toiletries, electronics, books. I gestured to the stacked boxes in the living room. "Take them and go." Jimmy walked inside without thanking me, muttering something under his breath. Lydia scanned my apartment with an expression that mixed judgment and triumph, like she was confirming his space was hers to invade now. Kara kneeled by the boxes. Is this everything? As far as I know, I said. Jimmy rummaged through one box. Where's my speaker? In that one, I pointed. My posters. Bottom box. He kept asking questions rapid fire like he was trying to find a reason to accuse me of something. I kept answering with measured calm. Then he went into my bedroom. At first, I thought nothing of it. He'd kept some things in the closet. But when I heard the rustle of my shelves, something uneasy stirred in my stomach. A moment later, Jimmy shouted, "Where are they?" I walked into the doorway. Where are what? My vinyl records. His face was flushed. The signed ones. The whole collection. The shelf is empty. My blood ran cold. What do you mean the shelf is empty? I pushed past him. The shelf was empty, completely bare. The space where 30 vinyls normally sat alphabetized, cared for dusted weekly, was nothing but clean wooden slats. A sick feeling pooled in my stomach. A sense of clarity, too, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. You move them, Jimmy said accusingly. Don't play games. I absolutely did not, I said. You're the one who helped me reorganize them last month. Lydia stepped into the doorway, arms folded. Maybe you misplaced them. The way she said it lightly with a small smirk tugging at her lips made something in me ignite. I didn't misplace a 4,000 collection, I said coldly. Jimmy shrugged, feigning innocence. Well, they're not here. No, I whispered, staring directly at him. They're not. There was a pause, a heavy one. Lydia shifted her gaze. Kara glanced between us nervously. And Jimmy looked almost too calm. You took them, I said softly. Didn't you? Jimmy put on an offended expression. Why would I take your records? Because I said you're angry, you're petty, and you knew how much they meant to me. He scoffed again, but it wasn't convincing this time. They're probably in storage or something. You mean the storage unit you had the key to? Lydia chimed in. Why would he steal from you? That's insane. I looked her dead in the eyes. Because you convinced him he was the victim, and he wanted to punish me. Something flickered across her expression, something tight and almost triumphant, revealing more than she wanted to. I felt the final confirmation settle into my bones. You have 24 hours, I said quietly. Return the collection, or I file a police report for theft. Jimmy burst out laughing. Good luck proving I took anything. It won't be luck, I replied. It'll be evidence. His laughter died abruptly. Kara shifted uncomfortably. Jimmy, maybe we should... No, he snapped. Let's go. They stormed out, Lydia tossing me one last smug glance as she passed. And as the door closed behind them, I stood in the silent apartment, my chest tight, my heart pounding, my shelf empty. The anniversary humiliation had been bad, but this was different. This was deliberate, calculated, cruel. And deep down I knew, the real war had just begun. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that empty shelf, the bare wood, the hollow space where my records should have been 30 pieces of my history, the soundtrack of my 20s. The pieces I collected slowly, lovingly, obsessively. I kept replaying Jimmy's expression in my mind. Not shocked, not confused, just smug. The kind of smugness that only shows up when someone believes they have the upper hand. By sunrise, I'd already made my decision. I dialed the police non-emergency line at 7:45 a.m., pacing the length of my apartment as I explained everything. The breakup, the boxes, the missing collection, Jimmy's access to my place. The officer listened politely, then said the words I dreaded. Ma'am, unless you have proof he removed the items, this sounds like a civil dispute. You may need to pursue it in small claims court. So you're saying, I said carefully, that someone can break into my home, take thousands of dollars worth of property, and it's not theft unless I have a photograph of them holding the stolen items. Silence. Then, I understand your frustration, but we need evidence to proceed. Evidence. That word echoed in my head long after the call ended. I refused to sit helplessly. I started documenting everything. I took photos of the empty shelf from multiple angles. Then I opened my phone, scrolling back months through messages, and found exactly what I remembered. A text from Jimmy. We should reorganize your shelf this weekend. I'll help. Then photos I'd sent him after the reorganization, my full collection arranged neatly. I screenshotted everything. I organized timestamps. I wrote down dates, every detail. But deep down, I worried it wouldn't be enough. I tried calling renter's insurance next. They said something similar. Without a police report, you can't file a claim. Perfect. Another circle, another dead end. For a moment, I just sat on my couch, head in my hands, breathing through the anger rising in my chest like fire. I wasn't going to be dismissed, not by Jimmy, not by Lydia, not by anyone. And then unexpectedly, the first break arrived. It came from my podcast. I don't have a massive following, maybe 300 regular listeners. I talk about vinyl culture, music, history, underrated artists. My personal collection. Nothing fancy, nothing viral. But it turns out one of my listeners was exactly the person I needed. Around noon, I got a message request on Instagram from someone named Daniel Jensen. His profile picture showed a man in his 40s wearing a suit, smiling warmly. His message read, "Helen, I listened to your latest episode and heard the situation you mentioned about the missing records. I'm a property lawyer. You have more evidence than you think." My pulse kicked up. I called him within minutes. He explained that the podcast episodes where I displayed my collection on camera were time-stamped proof of ownership, especially since the episodes were uploaded weeks or months before the theft. The sign pressing was clearly visible in 2 videos. My voice describing it, hands handling it carefully. The wall behind me, matching my current apartment, it was all evidence. And he said you mentioned in one episode that your boyfriend helped reorganize your collection. If you have any messages corroborating that it shows he had access. I do, I said breathless. I have the texts. Then gather everything. Organize it chronologically. Call the police back and insist they take a second look. I've seen cases won with far less. For the first time since the breakup, I felt hope. Real solid hope. I spent the next hour combing through my podcast files. I took still frames from the episodes. I printed screenshots. I highlighted dates. The signed limited pressing. My crown jewel appeared clearly on camera in 2 separate episodes. By 2:30 p.m., my coffee table looked like a crime board. Photos, notes, screenshots, audio clips, dates. At 3:00 p.m., I called the police again. This time I spoke firmly. I have video proof of my collection in my home. Multiple timestamps. I have messages proving Jimmy had access to the items. I would like an officer to review the evidence. They sent someone within 2 hours. Officer Clark was calm, patient, and surprisingly thorough. She sat with me as I showed her every screenshot, every picture, every clip. She asked questions, took notes, took the timestamps seriously. When she finished reviewing everything, she exhaled and said, "This is significantly more information than what we normally receive. I can file a formal theft report and reach out to the individual for questioning." I nearly cried with relief. After she left, I sat on my couch, staring at the closed door, letting it sink in. I wasn't powerless, Jimmy wasn't untouchable, and Lydia wouldn't be smirking much longer. 2 days later, everything detonated. It started with a text not from Jimmy, but from his sister Kara. Kara, FYI. "The cops came to Jimmy's work today. He's freaking out. Lydia is too. Thought you should know." I absorbed that silently. Then another message arrived, this time from an unknown number. It was Lydia. "Lydia, what is wrong with you? You called the police over some stupid records. You're ruining Jimmy's life." I stared at her words, feeling a cold, steady clarity. "Me, I told him to return them. He refused." Her response shot back instantly. "Lydia, he doesn't even know where half of them are. Some of them might have gotten damaged in storage. You're being insane." I froze. She admitted it. She actually admitted it, and worse, she confirmed there was damage. I took a screenshot immediately, then another, then emailed them to myself and to a backup drive. This was gold. This was exactly what Officer Clark had meant when she said evidence. Seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Jimmy, this time using his sister's number. "Jimmy, you're going too far. This is harassment. Drop the report." "Jimmy, we were stressed. We made mistakes. But you're blowing everything out of proportion." "Jimmy, please, just talk to me." Whether he was panicking or manipulating, I didn't respond. Instead, I called a lawyer. The free consultation was tomorrow. That night, for the first time in a month, I slept deeply, because for the first time, I knew the truth wasn't going anywhere. The police had evidence. I had proof, and Jimmy and Lydia had finally slipped up. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they could gaslight me into silence. They thought I would crumble. But the thing about taking someone's prized collection is that you underestimate the person who built it. And I was just getting started. By the time I walked into the lawyer's office the next morning, I had every piece of evidence in a neatly labeled folder. I expected skepticism, indifference, a polite but reluctant, "This might be tough to prove." Instead, attorney Martin Caldwell flipped through my documents, stopped at the screenshots of Lydia's texts, and let out a low whistle. "Well," he said, leaning back, "your ex and his friend weren't very bright." I blinked. "So, I have a case." "You have a strong case," he corrected. "Theft, possession damage, refusal to return property admission via text. Frankly, this is more airtight than most small claims filings I see." A weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying loosened in my chest. But the relief didn't last long. Just understand, he continued, this won't be quick. Filing is easy, but the emotional fallout, that's where things get messy. I almost laughed. Fallout, that was already happening. Still, I hired him for the initial phase, then paid the small filing fee to officially begin the case. $6,500 in damages, the estimated full value of the collection, plus repairs, plus fees, plus the missing items. The paperwork was submitted on a Tuesday. Jimmy was served Wednesday afternoon, and by Wednesday night, the war had begun. At 9:26 p.m., my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring, suspecting it was Jimmy from someone else's phone again. But when the voicemail appeared, the transcript preview showed a name I did recognize, Jimmy's mother. I played it back on speaker, arms crossed. Helen, this is Diane Ross. I heard about the situation. I'm disappointed this has escalated to courts and lawyers. Whatever happened between you and Jimmy should have been handled privately. I raised him better than to be dragged through legal mud over something as trivial as music records. Please call me back. This isn't how adults resolve things. I deleted it, not even worth responding. Minutes later, another call came in. This time, Jimmy's father, Howard. Hello, Helen, he said, breath heavy with rehearsed patience. Look, I know you're upset. Anyone would be. But is this really worth ruining my son's career over? He made a mistake. I took a slow breath. He stole from me. That isn't a mistake. A mistake, Howard insisted, that could haunt him for the rest of his life. I felt something cold settle in my voice. Maybe he should have thought about that before taking thousands of dollars worth of property. Howard sighed, defeated. Think about it. That's all I ask. I hung up without another word. By midnight, I had blocked the entire Ross family, but their attempts were nothing compared to what came next. 2 days later, Jimmy texted me from Kara's phone. Jimmy, I found some of the records. 18. The rest are probably lost. Take what I have and drop the case. This was the moment I had been bracing for. Me send photos. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with 20 pictures. I stared at each image carefully. My heart sank and then hardened. The vinyl jackets were bent. Some sleeves torn. At least 4 records looked deeply scratched. One was cracked. The limited edition signed pressing the one worth over $200 was nowhere in sight. Me. Where are the missing 12? Jimmy didn't reply for 7 minutes. Then, Jimmy, she doesn't know. She, Lydia, not even pretending anymore. Me. Where is the signed pressing? This time the answer came faster, but somehow worse. Jimmy probably lost in the move. Lost. A rare collector's item I guarded like a piece of my soul. A record I drove 5 hours to get signed. A record only 100 people in the world owned. Lost. My stomach twisted. Not misplaced, not packed somewhere. Lost. Which meant either they sold it or they destroyed it. Either way, it wasn't coming back. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded everything to Martin, my lawyer. His reply, we now have enough for damages. Do not accept anything. The court date was set 3 weeks out. During those 3 weeks, Jimmy's family escalated. His mother sent long texts about how I was cruel and vindictive. His sister said I was ruining their family over petty objects. His father sent a final message. What do you want here? The records. The money revenge. To which I replied, I want my property returned in the condition it was taken. That's it. Silence. Then, Lydia messaged me from a burner account. Lydia. He's falling apart because of you. You pushed him to this. If you had just stayed for dinner like a normal partner, none of this would have happened. I stared at her words, feeling something inside me go quiet. Not anger, not shock. Just the cold realization of who she was. A woman who believed Jimmy's choices were always someone else's fault. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Her next message came anyway. Lydia, if he loses his job, that's on you. My jaw tightened. If Jimmy lost his job, it would be because he'd stolen thousands of dollars worth of property, refused to return it, let it get damaged, then lied about it. He wasn't losing his job because I filed a report. He was losing his job because he wanted me to suffer more than he wanted to be decent. Court was approaching. The pressure from the Ross family grew louder, more insistent, more desperate. But something strange also began happening. People from my podcast began messaging me. Strangers, listeners, collectors, people who knew what losing a rare pressing felt like. They wrote things like, good for you, don't back down. If someone stole my collection, I'd do worse. Each message strengthened me, reinforced my resolve, reminded me why I started fighting in the first place. Because theft is theft. Because manipulation is manipulation. Because Jimmy wasn't the only one who had convinced me to minimize my feelings, I'd done it to myself too. But not anymore. As the court date approached, I didn't feel scared. I felt ready. Ready for truth, ready for justice, ready for closure, and ready to watch Jimmy finally face consequences he never imagined would catch up to him. The morning of the hearing felt strangely calm. I expected nerves, maybe even fear, but when I walked into the courthouse lobby, holding my binder of evidence, a binder I had built page by page, screenshot by screenshot, moment by moment, I felt grounded, steady, almost serene. This wasn't revenge, this wasn't spite, this was closure. Jimmy and Lydia were already there. Jimmy wore a wrinkled button-down and a tie that didn't match. His hair was uncombed. He kept wringing his hands, glancing at the clock every few seconds. There was none of the smugness I remembered, just panic layered over exhaustion. Lydia sat beside him in full business casual blouse, blazer hair straightened, but her expression cracked the moment she saw me. She looked furious, betrayed even as if I had somehow wronged her. Jimmy's lawyer, some irritated-looking man in a cheap gray suit, leaned down and whispered something to him, and Jimmy nodded mechanically, eyes unfocused. Then I saw them Jimmy's family. His mother and sister sat rigidly on the bench, against the wall, arms folded, radiating judgment. His father stood near the corner with a hand pressed to his forehead, like this was all a massive inconvenience he'd been forced to attend. They didn't look at me, not yet. Good. When the bailiff finally called our names, everything inside me sharpened. Jimmy shuffled awkwardly behind his lawyer. Lydia followed, even though she wasn't supposed to sit at the table. She flashed me a glare before slipping into the gallery seating. I stepped to my side of the courtroom and placed my binder down carefully, the way I used to place records onto a turntable, precise, intentional, steady. The judge, a stern woman with silver-framed glasses, looked between us. Let's begin. Jimmy's lawyer went first. Your Honor, he said, adopting a tone of forced concern. My client acknowledges that some items belonging to Ms. Stabler may have been mistakenly taken during a chaotic breakup, but the plaintiff is pursuing an exaggerated legal battle over a misunderstanding. She has already recovered the majority of the records. This case is an overreaction fueled by emotions, not facts. I kept my expression still. The judge turned toward me. Ms. Stabler. My lawyer Martin stepped forward and began laying everything out. Time-stamped podcast videos showing the full collection in my apartment. Screenshots of Jimmy admitting he helped reorganize them. Photos of the empty shelf after he removed the items. Messages from Lydia confirming damage and possession. Market valuations proving the collection's worth. Police report documenting the theft. When Martin pulled up the screenshot of Lydia's text saying, "Some might have gotten damaged in storage," I watched the judge's expression shift. Her eyebrows lifted a millimeter, a subtle sign but a meaningful one. Jimmy stared at the table, jaw tight. Lydia's stiffened eyes narrowing. The judge finally exhaled, flipped through her notes, and asked, "Counselor does your client have the 12 missing records, including the signed limited edition pressing, valued at approximately $200? Jimmy's lawyer leaned down, whispered urgently. Jimmy's voice cracked as he muttered, "No." "Why not?" the judge asked. He swallowed. "They were donated by mistake." Silence fell through the courtroom like a dropped pin. The judge blinked slowly. "Donated." During the move, Jimmy added quickly, "It was an accident. She got rid of the wrong box." "She?" the judge asked. Jimmy froze. His lawyer coughed. "He means a friend was helping him, Your Honor." The judge looked directly at Lydia. "Is that true?" Lydia stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, refusing to answer. Her face was stiff with indignation, shame, and something else, fear. The judge turned back to Jimmy's lawyer. "This isn't a misunderstanding. This is theft followed by destruction of property. The plaintiff has provided substantial proof that these records existed, were owned by her, were taken from her home, and were damaged or destroyed while in the defendant's possession." Her voice was firm, final, already decided. "I am ruling in favor of the plaintiff. Judgment for $5,800, including damages, fees, and the value of the missing items." Jimmy's shoulders slumped as if the air had been knocked out of him. His mother gasped loudly. His sister muttered, "This is ridiculous." His father just closed his eyes. The judge added, "Given the defendant's financial situation, I will allow a payment plan of $300 per month until the full amount is paid. Then, court is adjourned." The gavel struck once, and that was it. Outside the courtroom, the explosion came instantly. Jimmy's mother rushed toward me, eyes blazing. "I hope you're happy," she hissed. "You've ruined him. Do you hear me? You ruined him." I didn't flinch. He ruined himself. His sister stepped forward next. It was just a few stupid records. You didn't have to destroy his entire life. I looked directly at her. They were worth thousands of dollars. He stole them. He damaged them. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Lydia stormed across the hall, pointing a finger at me. You're unbelievable. You couldn't just let it go. You had to make this about you being a victim. I tilted my head. You ordered a $340 bottle of wine on my anniversary dinner and then helped Jimmy steal my property. What part should I have let go exactly? Lydia sputtered. You're insane. No, I said calmly. I just have boundaries. You're confusing that with insanity because you've never had any yourself. Her face twisted with pure hatred. Jimmy finally approached, eyes red, voice trembling. Helen, please, I'm begging you. Don't make me pay this. I'm already on leave at work. They said I might lose my job over this. Please. For a brief moment, I almost felt something pity, maybe, but it vanished as quickly as it came. You had chances, I said softly. I gave you chances. I asked for my property back. You refused. You mocked me. You let her mock me. This isn't my fault. You're heartless, he whispered. I stepped closer. You stole from me, and you lied to my face about it. He didn't answer. I walked past him and out the courthouse doors into the cool afternoon air. For the first time in months, my lungs felt open, clear. The aftermath rippled slowly over the next few weeks. Jimmy lost his job. Not because of me, because his employer didn't want someone with an active theft judgment on his record working in their department. Lydia unfollowed me, untagged herself from every old photo, then blocked me entirely. A relief, really. Jimmy's family never contacted me again. And the 18 returned records. Most were ruined beyond repair. Warped, cracked, scratched with careless neglect. My renter's insurance covered part of the loss, thanks to the court ruling. The rest, well, that was on Jimmy. The rare signed pressing remained gone forever. Whether it was thrown out sold or spitefully smashed, I'll never know. Some stranger might have bought it for $3 at a thrift store. Maybe that's a tragedy. Maybe it's poetry. But I've accepted it. Because replacing a record is easier than replacing years of lost self-worth. And me, I rebuilt. Slowly, patiently, thoughtfully. I restarted my collection, found deals online, went to flea markets, reconnected with the joy of finding hidden gems in dusty boxes. My podcast went from 300 listeners to several thousand overnight. People wrote to me with their own stories of boundaries crossed, red flags, ignored partners who dismissed them. It was heartbreaking and empowering. I started therapy, learned to understand why I stayed too long, why I excused too much, why I believed I owed someone loyalty when they'd given me none. And eventually, I met someone new. I'm not rushing anything, but he respects my time, my hobbies, my space, my boundaries. The bar is low these days, but somehow he clears it effortlessly. When Jimmy makes his 19th payment to me months from now, I'll probably take that $300 and buy another rare pressing. Something meaningful. Something that symbolizes resilience. Because in the end, losing those records didn't break me. It rebuilt me. And if anyone ever tries to order a